Hi, I'm Gabe from Unsolicited Designs, and welcome to my report cards for Bloomburrow. In this series, I review every mythic rare from the set and give it a letter grade based on how mythic it feels, how unique the design is, and the creative deck building opportunities it provides. In this video, I'll be grading the 5 season cards. As a disclaimer, these are just my personal opinions as a casual Commander player, and I have the utmost respect for everyone over at Wizards of the Coast who work so hard to bring these creative designs to life. I hope I earn a like and subscribe from you by the end of the video, and without further ado, on to the review. Starting off, let's gather around while I explain how this cycle of cards works. Each card gives you 5 total paws to spend across 3 different modes. There's a 1-paw mode, a 2-paw mode, and a 3-paw mode. So, for example, you can select the 1-paw mode 5 times, or both 2-paw and 3-paw modes once each. Any combination that totals up to 5 paws. With that primer out of the way, let's evaluate Green's offering, Season of Gathering. For 2 green and 4 generic, you get a sorcery that says, for 1 paw, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. It gains Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. For 2 paws, choose Artifact or Enchantment. Destroy all permanents of the chosen type. And for 3 paws, draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. If you're casting this card and choosing the first mode 5 times, I would assume it's for a strangely specific situation or to outright win the game. And while the flexibility of modal spells is where their true power lies, there are plenty of cheaper options that are more effective at buffing your creatures and pushing damage. Though I do love that the first mode includes both Vigilance and Trample buffs to provide some extra utility. The 2-paw mode is where things really start to come together. Destroying all artifacts or all enchantments, and the option to choose both, is terrific. I find myself looking to include this option in my decks more and more as a reset button for when my opponents have their machinations up and running. And while it's hard not to catch yourself with some friendly fire, being in green can go a long way to mitigating it if you focus your ramp spells away from mana rocks and prefer dorks and land ramp instead. The final choice is also terrifically potent and can allow you to draw an obscene number of cards. It's in direct competition with Rishkar's expertise, so you're essentially trading a free spell of mana value 5 for destroying all artifacts or enchantments, or the +2 buff and the 2 extra cards that come with it. The 2 and 3-paw choices are fantastic. They're incredibly powerful and are the types of effects that catapult you into a strong position at the table. The 1-paw choice is pretty lackluster, but can provide some utility in a pinch. Combines nicely with the 3-paw mode, and, at the very least, balances the design compared to the other effects on offer. All of that adds up to an A. For all of us who enjoyed casting Barter in Blood once upon a time, feast your eyes upon Season of Loss. For 2 black and 3 generic, you get a sorcery that says, for 1 paw, each player sacrifices a creature. 2 paws, draw a card for each creature you controlled that died this turn. And for 3 paws, each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Unlike Season of Gathering, if you choose the 1-paw mode 5 times here, I think you'll be getting fine value. Of course, a board state where you have no creatures and each of your opponents has exactly 5, the coveted 15 for 1, is a bit of a pipe dream. And the prominence of token strategies can certainly dampen the effectiveness of this mode. But it also has the potential of being one-sided if you have more creatures than each of your opponents. There are a lot of situations to factor that first mode into, and we still have the other 2 options to combine with. Attacking all out before you cast the board wipe is a classic line of play, and looks to synergize nicely with the 2-paw mode, plus a triple activation of the 1-paw mode. 5 mana to clear the board and draw yourself 3 cards in the process is an excellent deal. What's more though, is that you can double up on the 2-paw choice, meaning you can draw 2 cards for each of your creatures that died this turn. There are plenty of outlets that provide a benefit for sacrificing your own creatures, and double dipping with a duo of cards on top of that is tremendous. Lastly, the 3-paw mode gives you a bit of reach. I think hitting each opponent is great, but unless your deck is dedicated to piling up a large graveyard, and your opponents don't regularly look to keep such things in check, this mode seems like the least effective and exciting to me. Perhaps if it included gaining you X life, it would move the needle for me, but I'm wrapped up in the first 2 modes, and your opponents will be just as stricken as you kill their creatures and profit. Grade A. And now for the season that I think is least representative of its name, Season of the Bold. For 2 red and 3 generic, you get a sorcery that says, for 1 paw, create a tapped treasure token. 2 pause, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play them. And 3 pause, until the end of your next turn, whenever you cast a spell, Season of the Bold deals 2 damage to up to 1 target creature. First things first, the 1 paw mode. I think from a balance and design perspective, creating the treasures tapped is a wise choice. It prevents this card from becoming a free spell or a ritual effect if you can manage to reduce its casting cost. 5 mana for 5 treasures is an interesting proposition, and as a filler mode to supplement the other 2 modes, it's very nice. Jumping over to the 2 paw mode, you can impulse 2 or 4 cards and, of critical importance in my opinion, you have access to them until the end of your next turn. Now, before we get to the 3rd mode, I want to draw your attention to a comparable card, Inspired Tinkering. It's also a sorcery and has the same mana value, but with 1 less red pip even. Now, let's look at 2 possible modes for Season of the Bold. Number 1, exile 2 cards and create 3 tapped treasures. And number 2, exile 4 cards and create 1 tapped treasure. Option number 1 is strictly worse than Inspired Tinkering, as you see 1 less card and your treasures are tapped. Option number 2 lets you see 1 additional card, but gives you 2 fewer treasure. I think this is a pretty bad exchange. Comparing these options on a mythic rare to an uncommon is, in my view, devastating. But there is one more mode to consider. Each spell you cast deals 2 damage to up to 1 creature for the rest of this turn and your next turn. Well, after spending 5 mana, I don't envision you casting too many more spells this turn, and any tapped treasure tokens you created with the first mode certainly aren't helping you. They can boost your mana slightly next turn, letting you cast 1, maybe 2 spells, so a boost of 2 to 4 damage, or you may have exiled the top 2 cards, which you can also cast next turn, and provided that 1 or both of them weren't lands, it'll boost your damage output by 2 or 4 points. You can work around either a mana limitation by selecting the treasures, or a spell limitation with the impulse mode, and that's a nice touch, but ultimately, 2 damage per spell is pretty pathetic. It will require 3 or 4 spells to remove a large threat, or you can pick off multiple utility creatures, which is a more realistic application. Again, it's really the flexibility on offer, but even this 3-paw mode looks like a joke compared to a host of spells at comparable mana values. Ones that don't require you to jump through as many hoops or simply just affect multiple creatures. So you have 2 modes that, in any combination, are arguably far worse than an uncommon, and a 3rd mode that is laughably ineffective, especially compared to similarly costed effects at lower rarities. These effects, in any combination, are simply not mythic, and I hope you'll agree with me that there's nothing bold about saying this season deserves an F. Let's dig into the next season. Season of the Burrow costs 2 white and 3 generic. You get a sorcery for 1 paw that says, create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token. 2 paws, exile target non-land permanent, its controller draws a card. And for 3 paws, return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with an indestructible counter on it. Well, if you're looking to go wide with tokens, 5 mana for 5 of them is about as good a deal as you can hope for. There are probably plenty of players happy to take that offer, but it doesn't excite me much, and vanilla creature tokens are not mythic quality. For 2 paws, exiling a non-land permanent is quite good. Of course, in the tradition of white removal, your opponent gets a card in exchange. But being able to target essentially every permanent type is peak versatility. And exiling is prime removal, so I'd say this effect is largely acceptable. 3 paws buys back any permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard, and with an indestructible counter to boot. This is a nice effect, and the indestructible bonus is a great tweak to this design to make the mode stand out. However, we again run into an issue about how this text compares to similar cards. At 5 mana, some recent examples may limit what you can target slightly, but completely bypass the mana value of 3 or less restriction. And if you decide to target a creature, the established value of this effect is approximately 2 mana, as evidenced by a growing number of examples. Again, being modal means it's only fair for this spell to sacrifice some effectiveness on account of its flexibility, but I have a hard time looking at any of these modes and feeling like I come out very far ahead by casting this spell. Now, if your commander has a mana value of 3 or less, then I think the recursion ability becomes far more appealing. But beyond that, none of the available modes have as splashy of an effect as those on the green and black season. That puts Season of the Burrow in a bit of a hole. Grade C. And tying up our review is Season of Weaving. For 2 blue and 4 generic, you get a sorcery that, for 1 pause says, draw a card, 2 pause, choose an artifact or creature you control, create a token that's a copy of it, and for 3 pause, return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. Straight away, I'd say this season is completely playable as a 6 mana draw 5. Sure, it's sorcery speed and nothing particularly exciting, but that is a very fine rate at comparable mana values. The 2-paw option gets you a token copy of any creature or artifact you control, which requires some setup, but given that this is a 6 mana spell, that isn't much to expect. Better still, you can select this mode twice, getting 2 copies of your best artifact and or creature. Curving a 5-drop into Season of Weaving will give you 10 mana in value, and you'll still have 1 paw left over to draw a card. That's just tremendous opportunity. The final mode offers a safety valve in case the board state is heavily stacked against you. Considering this effect typically costs 6 mana on its own, it's fantastic that you can draw 2 on top of it. Or, better still, make a token with the 2-paw option, then clear the rest of the table with your new token unaffected. Being the first one back onto the field is important, and Season of Weaving gives you that option. But best of all, if you can build your deck around a token strategy, this becomes a one-sided, albeit temporary, board wipe. Of course, it will be essentially a permanent wipe if it leads to you attacking your opponents for lethal. Each mode offered here has terrific potential and is priced perfectly. I can see each combination of choices being attractive in a variety of game states, and expect Season of Weaving will give you quite a yarn to tell. Grade A. And there you have it, my grades for all 5 seasons from Bloomburrow. I think what separates the standouts from the disappointments is that they can each draw a tremendous amount of cards, or they can dramatically impact the board state. But that's just my reasoning. Let me know what you think of my grades, and which season cards you're excited to play in your own decks. Thanks for watching. I hope I earned a like and subscribe from you, and I'd love it if you'd share this video. If not, thanks for watching this long anyways. You can follow me on X at unsolicitedmtg for channel updates and other nonsense. And be sure to check back for my continued reviews, as next up will be the Calamity Beasts. Once again, I'm Gabe from Unsolicited Designs, and who asked me anyways?